maybe I'm making a stretch there. Maybe I'm making a reach, but I think that's part of what makes this special is that they saw it that way, that this was something that was going to manifest itself and were willing to put their lives on the line for it. And it worked. Why wouldn't it work today? Why wouldn't it work for us to allow our people to have some liberty, give them the skills to be able to have liberty even from their own emotions, and let them pursue happiness right here in our workplaces?
Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsay! Happy 4th of July, Mike Marshall. I don't think I need to tell you that.
It's 4th of July. I had no idea.
You're just that American. For those who are listening and not viewing, Mike has an incredibly patriotic background and the most patriotic jacket I've ever seen in my entire life. There is a backstory to this jacket, I have to assume.
Yes, yeah. The jacket, when I was national president of a large volunteer organization, and of course the national president had to wear something, United States flag looking. So yeah, our HR team, our PR team came up with the idea for these jackets, and they were wildly popular.
Oh, I believe you.
Yeah,
I believe you.
I wear it on the 4th of July. I wore it to an honor flight reception.
Ooh.
And people were like, "Where did you get that jacket? Whoa, that's so cool!" So yeah, I don't think you could buy one quite like this anymore. But I got the flag, I got the fireworks, got the jacket, and then what are you doing?
Well, my shirt's kind of blue.
Well, yeah,
and I legally changed my name to Lee Greenwood for the day. Does that count?
Okay, I think that you win. There's no doubt. God bless the USA. I loved your song there, Lee. It was fantastic.
You know, we should mention, we're not going to mention any names, but we do know a person who is married to a person who regularly performed with Lee Greenwood.
That is true.
Did you know that?
I'd heard that. I didn't know if it was true or not.
It probably doesn't surprise you, though. Like you automatically know who I'm talking about. Anyway, this is an inside conversation. I'll stop. Hey, we're doing a 4th of July episode on what is essentially, we figured this out, right? That this is our anniversary.
It's our anniversary, and we will have an anniversary episode following this one. But given that, our release date's always on Tuesday, 4th of July falls on a Tuesday, we just wanted to commemorate the activity. And one of the things that I've been doing for at least the last 20 years is somewhere I either sent out, in the old days, I'd send it out in person. And then when social media came along, I often posted this letter that was written by John Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And the letter's dated July 3rd, 1776.
Right.
So those history buffs in the room are going, "Oh yeah, that's the day before the thing."
The history buffs.
And when the first time I read the letter, it was confusing because he's writing this letter in the evening of July 3rd, 1776, and he's writing a letter to Mrs. Adams.
Right.
First of all, hats off to John writing a letter to the wife.
That's right.
After spending a whole day, declaring our independence from, the British.
Yep.
So even after all that, he was like, got to write a little note to the wife.
Right.
And, so he penned a little letter talking about the day.
And July 2nd is the day they vote to declare independence. July 4th is when they ratify the Declaration of Independence, right? So this is right in the middle after he's made that vote.
Yeah, they voted. They're in the process of signing. So apparently the signing took 2 days. So some guys signed on the 3rd and then the rest signed on the 4th.
Got it.
Which I didn't know. I always assumed that, July 4th, we had a meeting, we signed up, we sent a note to the king and said, neener.
Yeah, they've been working on this document for a while. Right?
Yeah, this has been an ongoing process. So John Adams writes to Mrs. Adams, and the letter's fairly short, but if we could write like this today, it would be absolutely amazing. So if I may,
please.
The words of John Adams to Mrs. Adams. You will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is more than worth all the means, and the posterity will triumph in that day's transaction, even although we should rue it, which I trust in God we shall not. The second day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this day forward, forevermore. John Adams, July 3rd, 1776.
Here, here.
Wow. Yeah, this if John was to come back and look at some of our text messages, he would be wildly disappointed. Oh, that's so bad.
Yeah.
When you believe that, yeah, this is not something he was writing. I'm sure he never knew that this letter would be saved and at some point, shared again.
Right.
But to write with that kind of depth and power and command of the English language and thought, just to me, it just gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, 100%. I believe he's the one that he and Jefferson were sort of political adversaries in many ways, but they were two of the five on the committee that, sort of were tasked with creating a declaration. And my understanding is that to the end of their days, they had a correspondence going back and forth where they were doing things like translating bits of ancient Greek and Latin from famous, users of rhetoric, Cicero and people like that. So this is, these are men of letters in every sense of the term. And it absolutely just oozes out of him in, this, like you say, sitting down at the end of a very long day, writing a little note to the wife, that it just comes out as something that is better than any political speech we've had in the last 20 years, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And there's such prescient here. I mean, he anticipates the bonfires, the illuminations, the celebrations, the guns, the bells. He almost lays out the agenda for what the celebration. Really, the only thing that he gets wrong is the name. So he's like, we should call it the Great Anniversary Festival.
Yeah.
You're like, no, yeah, not feeling it, John. Yeah. What else you got? 4th of July? Yeah, let's just keep it simple. Let's go.
Well, and ironically enough, the other term for it is Independence Day, which is because, and I guess Thomas Jefferson gets most of the credit, but I think we should probably read a little bit of the beginning of the Declaration, where we sort of lay out the stakes here. And I'll read just the first paragraph and then a little bit into the second, but
yeah, so here's the actual document that John is so fired up about.
Yeah, this is what they ratify on the 4th of July, the next day. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So here's the first of those causes. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. It goes on from there, and we will definitely link to it, and you should read it this year as our nation is in political turmoil in so many ways. It is a very clarifying set of words to think about. Well, it's our why, right? It's, I mean, to look at what they accomplished. It's really laying out, this is why we are doing what we're doing, and we think that we have a God-given right and even maybe responsibility to do that. I mean, these guys are really prescient is a good word. I mean, they really saw what was going to happen as a result of what needed to happen.
Oh yeah, yeah. They you could see they saw the end game, and you see that in John Adams' letter,
Right.
where he says this anniversary festival should be celebrated from one end of this continent to the other.
Right.
Like, there was 13 colonies clinging to the sliver of the edge of the continent of North America. Yep. And he's already picturing, all right, this thing's going to go, from one ocean to the other. It's going to be magnificent. So even that thought process was absolutely amazing.
Well, it's very strange that you picked this letter as something we should tackle. And yesterday, before we decided to record, I received a package in the mail. A whole bunch of Penguin paperbacks that are about the founding fathers. This came from a friend, and I don't want to tell his story because it's his story to tell, but he served our country in Iraq. He did some pretty dangerous things. He came back to the States and said, what the heck is going on in America? Why are we so polarized? What did I just risk my life for? And he came to some conclusions by reading a lot of the founding fathers and some of the documents that inspired them. And to put it very bluntly, he's a good Catholic boy, and he said I risked my life partly for a Calvinist ideal. He said, and I'm A-okay with that, by the way. But what he means by that is this little idea of that there's a destiny here. There's a destiny that's going to take us from sea to shining sea. We talked about manifest destiny. That's something you would have learned in history class. But I don't even necessarily mean it as like a political force. I mean it more as that the founding fathers really believed that there was a sovereign providence. There was a God who provided and was in charge, and nobody told him what to do, but he had a plan. He had a plan, and that we are fitting into that plan. That's why the beginning of the Declaration of Independence talks about, in the course of human events. And he saw that and said, that's where we're headed. This is what God has orchestrated and put in place, and it's time for us to grab the baton and run our race.
Oh, and yeah. Well,
knowing that it would cost.
I love how they phrase it. We're going to dissolve the political bonds.
Right. Right.
Like how, if we wrote it today, it would say, listen, it's not you, it's me. And here's the reason I'm not worthy of us continuing this relationship. And then we'd break off, and then King George would go, yeah, it's obviously them, and let them go. But yeah, the manner in which they declare it, that they say this is bigger than even humans, right? This is bigger than individuals. This is bigger than the group. This is something that was preordained to happen.
Yeah.
But even within that, though, they don't shy away from the fact that they know it's going to cost a lot, right? He says it's going to cost toil, blood, and treasure. Yeah. And so it's it may be predestined, but there's a lot of work to be involved in order to make it come to fruition.
Well, and that's how the Declaration of Independence ends, right? With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and perhaps most importantly, our sacred honor. Like their name meant something to them, to the point that they were willing to risk their name, our lives, all of our treasure, all of our fortune, But yeah, we're even putting our names on the line here. This is our reputation, that this is what we are. This is literally a hill we will die on. And many of them did.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When you read that that bio, that summation of what happened to all of them, right? All the signers, and the how tragic and tough their lives were from this point forward. So yeah, they did exactly what they said, what they knew was going to happen came to life.
Yeah.
Well,
we should add I got to look at this is fairly new info to me, and I'm ashamed to admit that, but the Committee of Five are the members of the Second Continental Congress who were sort of tasked with drafting the Declaration, and I think really it was Jefferson who was the main guy, but one of the five, it's John Adams, it's Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Robert Livingston was a representative of New York. He ended up serving as Secretary of Foreign Affairs, and gave George Washington the presidential oath of office. And oh, by the way, he negotiated the Louisiana Purchase. So here's Adam writing a letter to his wife saying, yeah, sea to shining sea, it's going to happen. And within that same generation, they already said, yeah, we should totally buy this land. We're going to expand into the rest of the West and make this a land of the free. The idea of liberty, this is, I guess, a soapbox for me, but that I have a love for the liberal arts.
Mm-hmm.
And arts is just a way of describing a bundle of skills. And liberal does not mean left wing. So, calm down if you're feeling uptight about that. Liberal means liberated. And the idea is that if you're a free man, here are the skills you are going to need to not be a slave to anybody, to any regime, to any fancy political message from folks that don't mean good, and freedom from your own emotions, right? That these were people who were in control of themselves. And I think a lot of it you really do have to attribute to the fact that they were men of letters, that these were people who had studied the great documents of our past and said, here's what we can take, here are the treasures that we can pull forward. And they wove all of that into what became, the Constitution and how we set up our federal and state governmental system that's just so unique, so unique that you get all the way to the 1830s and the French send Alexis de Tocqueville to study us because it's so weird. And he writes this book that's still a textbook for democracy today called Democracy in America. It keeps going, right? I mean, the Berlin Wall fell. I mean, we could go on and on talking about how freedom wins, liberty wins, and I think there's a lesson there for the workplace. I think we have to let our people be free to pursue happiness, and there's a role that we have in that, sometimes using coaching to help them really embrace that. That's maybe I'm making a stretch there, maybe I'm making a reach, but I think that's part of what makes this special, is that they saw it that way, that this was something that was going to manifest itself, and were willing to put their lives on the line for it. And it worked. Why wouldn't it work today? Why wouldn't it work for us to allow our people to have some liberty, give them the skills to be able to have liberty even from their own emotions, and let them pursue happiness right here in our workplaces? Mm-hmm. I'll stop.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I think that's an amazing, and when you think about right, who was in this country, the richest, the best, and the brightest, so to speak, they didn't leave their countries.
That's right.
It was the people who felt that they were outcasts, that they were limited in scope, that they weren't being treated fairly, that they were ostracized, the huddled masses, as that statue says. And so, but if you take those people, maybe they weren't, they didn't come with the most resources, they didn't come with the highest pedigrees. But if you take those people, you put them together and you give them autonomy and freedom,
mm-hmm.
They built something absolutely spectacular that the world had never seen, to this degree.
Yeah.
So there is something to be said for yeah, a government that when you think about the Bill of Rights, it was all the limitations on government. It's like here's
Yeah.
the things government can't do, which in turn said everything else, go figure it out, go forth, pursue happiness, pursue prosperity, do the most that you can with what you have. And
Yeah.
people embrace that.
Yeah. Tocqueville even says that the people had to govern themselves because they were so separated from the British, government, through the Atlantic Ocean. So they figured out local government and how to, we're going to live in community and govern ourselves. And so it was sort of easy to lay a weaker federal system over top of that and say, you guys, Tocqueville makes the point that, if there was I think it was a church building or something, he said if a town's church steeple, was starting to fall in, the townspeople would stand around and say, somebody's going to have to address that. The authorities better get here and address that. Whereas in New England, they'd form a committee and go do it themselves. And man, that level of autonomy, right? Like that's autonomy and liberty, but it's not I'm free to do whatever I want. It's I'm free to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different way of thinking, right? That's true empowerment of your people. I maybe I'm making a reach that I shouldn't make, but I think that we have a chance to be little versions of that in our workplaces if we allow governance that way and allow our people to be educated, frankly, growing them, which is what you and I know keeps causing turnover, is that people aren't getting a chance to grow. So
yeah, if you have people who believe what you believe, and you give them the space to be creative and bring their whole selves to whatever the work is, they will astound you with the results.
Yeah, better than what you'd come up with on your own.
Oh, definitely. And we still see hints of that. You'll see a natural disaster down in the Gulf, and what do they call it? The Cajun Navy shows up.
Right.
Just every good old boy with an outboard motor and a John boat. He's there before the government ever shows up. And they're rescuing people and doing the right thing because that's just what you do, right? We share these values, we share these beliefs, and I can stand around and go, well, when's government going to get here? But no, they trailer their boats, they get in the water at their own personal expense, at their own personal risk.
That's right.
And go help their fellow man. And you're like, that's what made this work. That's what made it great.
That's exactly right. Well, I'm absolutely fired up and ready to go do something patriotic for the rest of my day. And I really do think that you would do well to get our podcast done with, and then immediately click over into an audio recording or, pull it up on the web, whatever you need to do, but read the Declaration of Independence. It's, some of the words are a little antiquated to how we write today, but they're beautiful. I would encourage you to read it out loud. If you're like me and sometimes you struggle with, reading the printed word, just read it out loud and makes it a little easier on yourself. But do yourself a favor and study the Declaration of Independence today and think about how blessed we are to be, even today in our polarized time, in a country where, nobody is going to mess with you for saying some of the things that we say today, whereas in other countries, they're getting jailed for mentioning it. We could go on and on about all the stories we know of hardships in other places, but as of right now, as of today, we are allowed to pursue happiness, and I think we ought to do it.
Most definitely. As Adam said, there should be pomp, parade, shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations.
Woohoo!
I'm for all those things.
Right.
So let's get out there and make it a great 4th of July and happy Independence Day.
And there you have it, another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No rights are reserved, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.